From 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9, he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Please like, share and subscribe for additional updates. Title: A Critical Study of 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9, focusing on God's grace and our weakness. Introduction. The Apostle Paul offers a significant insight into the character of God's grace and our frailty as humans in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9. Christians should take tremendous comfort from this verse, which serves as a constant reminder of God's grace and its ability to uphold us in our frailties. Three primary themes will be covered in this exegesis of the verse: appreciating God's grace, confessing our frailty, and accepting supernatural strength. Part 1. Comprehending God's grace. Paul states at the beginning of the verse, "But he said to me, 'My grace is sufficient for you.'" In response to Paul's request that a thorn be removed from his flesh, God made this reply. This demonstrates that God's grace is both abundant and sufficient. It is all-inclusive and able to satisfy all of our needs. Unmerited favor. In the Christian faith, grace is defined as God's loving kindness and unmerited favor extended to humankind. We freely get this gift, which we do not deserve, by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. God's grace is abundant with divine compassion and forgiveness, not constrained by human inadequacies or mistakes. Empowering strength. Believers are empowered by God's grace, which is an active force rather than a passive quality. We are redeemed and given the ability to live lives that are shaped by God's love because of His grace. Paul personally witnesses the strength of God's grace in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9, as it keeps him going while he is weak. Part 2. Admitting our deficiencies. The line, "For my power is made perfect in weakness," appears in the second portion of the verse. This statement emphasizes how contradictory it is that God's power is completely displayed in our frail human form. Recognizing our shortcomings as Christians is necessary to fully experience the transformative power of God's grace. Human frailty. Paul's thorn in the flesh is a metaphor for a particular vulnerability or difficulty he encountered. The passage makes no mention of the specific nature of this thorn, but it serves as a reminder of our fundamental weakness as human beings. Everybody has shortcomings, restrictions, and places where they could improve. Acknowledging and embracing our shortcomings enables us to depend more entirely on God's power. Dependency on God. We become more vulnerable to a deeper reliance on God when we own our shortcomings. Our human strength and capacity are finite, but the power of God is limitless. Paul saw this and accepted the fact that God's strength might be made complete in him via his weakness. We come to understand the sufficiency of God's generosity and the transforming force of his power precisely in our weakness. Part 3. Adopting a divine power. Finally, Paul responds to the verse, saying, "Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me." Here, Paul exhibits a drastic change of viewpoint by deciding to accept his shortcomings as a way to feel the power of Christ inside him. Boasting in weakness. It would seem odd that Paul would choose to highlight his shortcomings. But he allows the totality of Christ's power to enter him via this meek recognition of his limits. By focusing on his shortcomings, Paul shifts the emphasis away from himself and toward the miraculous operation of God's love. Christ's authority over us. We make room for Christ's strength to rest upon us when we accept our shortcomings. God's power is most visible when we are broken, for it is through us that he works to accomplish his goals. We enable Christ's power to manifest and exalt his name when we give him our infirmities. Conclusion. A stunning revelation of God's grace and its changing power for believers can be found in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 9. We can taste the fullness of Christ's power in our lives by realizing God's abundant grace, accepting our frailties, and clinging to his strength. This verse reminds us that rather than hindering us, our flaws allow God's grace to operate in and through us. As Christians, let us accept our shortcomings with humility and trust in the abounding power of God's grace.